All right, so welcome to post week 3 college football playoff projections. Today we will be talking about 1st through 12, and then I'll do maybe a little more of a breakdown on the group of 5. So the first seed I have right now is Georgia. I saw the polls, the AP poll had Texas 1, and even the coaches poll had Texas 2. I think early on it's hard to move teams up and down based on the quality of opponent. So I know Texas beat Michigan, but we don't really know how good Michigan is. And you can kind of say the same about Georgia. This isn't the first time Georgia's played bad against an unranked opponent, early in the season especially. So I don't look too much into the Kentucky game. I know it was a 1-point game, and they only had 1 touchdown in it. But besides that, I think once they get to Bama next weekend and then Texas in October, they'll be fine, and they'll look like the team we expect them to look like. Number 2 seed, I have Ohio State. But in my rankings, I also have Ohio State too, because they haven't played anybody yet. So it's hard to evaluate early this season. So I'm going off of talent wise. I think they look incredible with Jeremiah Smith at receiver, and then the duo in the backfield at running back with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. But the reason they're the 2 seed is because I think they're going to win the Big Ten, because we don't know what Oregon's fully going to look like yet. So number 3, then I have the ACC champs, which will be Miami. Cam Ward continues to look like a Heisman candidate, looks phenomenal on the field. Xavier Restrepo is doing what he has been doing the last couple years, and he is on track for another all-ACC first team nomination. And then we haven't seen much of Damian Martinez yet, because in the offseason it was the remaining Pac-12 teams with or Pac-12 transfers with Cam Ward at quarterback and Damian Martinez at running back. So it'll be interesting once they start ACC play to see if they'll use him a little more. The one change in my projections I have this week is the Big 12 champion. I have Oklahoma State in there this week. Utah did not look impressive whatsoever, and I know you could say it was Utah State, it was non-conference, but it really worries me that Cam Rising got injured week 2 and had to miss a game, especially leading up to a big Big 12 matchup against Oklahoma State this upcoming Saturday. Oklahoma State has returned so much from last year, and they continuously look the same as they did last year, which I can't say the same about Kansas State. Kansas State, they won 31-7 against Arizona Friday night, but they had a punt return for a touchdown, and Avery Johnson had under 200 passing yards in the game and only 1 passing touchdown. And I think that's really because their receiving core, they're all first-year starters. And then they do have Dante Cephas as a transfer coming in, but he hasn't looked the part that the Wildcat fans thought he would be. So I haven't seen enough yet from Kansas State to be impressed with. So they're still in my rankings. They're 15. And honestly, not really even thought about as the Big 12 champ. And then, Isaac Wilson at Utah, going back to the Utes, he did not look impressive to me, so I could not put him with Utah in the category yet, because we have to see if Rising's healthy and what he looks like coming back off of injury. And so here's when we start to get into the at-large spots. I have at 5, my third-ranked team is Texas. I mean, I was very, very impressed with Arch Manning filling in. And if you look at their schedule, they have UL Monroe this Saturday. They have Mississippi State the following Saturday. And then after that, they have a bye before they get to Oklahoma and Alabama on their schedule. Or not Alabama, Georgia on their schedule, sorry. Even without Quinn Ewers, I think Arch Manning could do a good enough job to look the same as they did with Quinn Ewers if he has to play against Oklahoma and Georgia. And I don't think Ewers will be out that long. So I think what they should do is they should have Arch start this Saturday and then against Mississippi State and let Ewers heal up before two massive matchups in the SEC. And like I said, with Ewers, how he looked against Michigan and then how he looked at Bama last season, we know he could come back off of injury and look phenomenal playing. So I'm not too worried about that. At 6, I have Ole Miss. I thought this past week was their first Power 4 matchup, and I know it's only Wake Forest, but Jackson Dart continues to look like a Heisman top 5 candidate. And with Henry Parrish at running back looks really good too, better than I thought he would this offseason. So far, Ole Miss has exceeded expectations that I held for them in the preseason. I think it'll be really interesting to watch them and see how they do in the SEC, because they have a pretty easy SEC schedule compared to teams like Georgia and Texas. Number 7, I have Alabama. I mean, it's looking at the overall aspect, I have 4 SEC teams in the top 5, but it is, I don't think you can really go against any of my picks. I mean, Milroe in the first 3 games has thrown for 2 touchdowns and ran for 2. That's not normal. Like, that is a Heisman-esque stat that he can bring to New York at the end of the season and win it because of that. So I also find it impressive that a 42-10 win in Camp Randall on Saturday against Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin's not what they used to be, but that is sending a message to the Big Ten saying, like, this is a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team that we beat by almost 5 touchdowns. That's sending a message to the whole conference and the nation saying that, hey, Bama's back with the Boar, and they're a top 5 team in the country. Number 8, the 8 seed, I have 6 overall, though, is Oregon. Dylan Gabriel looks the part. I think the hard thing for Oregon that they started to figure out this past week is how to put the ball in the end zone. They weren't putting up many points, even though Dylan Gabriel was putting up the stats. Dylan Gabriel also used his legs this Saturday, which I think Lanning will need to utilize more often when it comes to the Big Ten play. So it'll be interesting when Oregon plays some of the top teams in the Big Ten, especially Ohio State. Even though I know that's in Autzen, it won't be as big of a challenge as if it was in the shoe. I think Lanning needs to utilize Dylan Gabriel's legs and not just his arm. So it'll be interesting. Oregon will be a team I'll continue to watch, but for right now, I have enough faith to put them in the playoff pretty easily. And this is kind of on the 9 to 11 at-large spots, seeds, the last few at-large spots in the playoff. I kind of went away from my current rankings because I think the end of the season will look a little different. Right now, Tennessee in my rankings would not be in, but seeing how Nico Iamaleava has been playing for Tennessee has been phenomenal. So right now, I think Tennessee is a playoff team, but they need to show me more against better competition, which will start this Saturday against Oklahoma. I think we'll see what we think we will out of Nico Iamaleava. I think he'll have a phenomenal game on Saturday against Oklahoma, but right now they need to show me first in my current rankings for them to rise. Number 10, the 10 seed, I have Penn State. Drew Allaire has looked better than he did last year, and he's corrected a lot of his mistakes that he made last year, which is a very important part of his game that he had to do. And honestly, James Franklin has been criticized for not winning the big games. But I think even in the games that weren't as big, such as the Michigan and Ohio State games last year, he has improved his play calling to take more shots downfield, to utilize his receivers. So it's not just the run game and then keep running it, and then it's like a short 5-10 yard pass. They're taking 20, 25, 30-yard shots now, which is a big improvement from the past couple years. The 11 seed is USC. Their defense has continued to show, even if it's not against the top competition yet, if you can prove to me that you can hold group of 5 teams to single digits, I mean, that's enough for me at the moment to say you're not giving up 20, 30 points against opponents you should be holding to 3 to 7 points against. That's a huge improvement. And now to the 12 seed, the group of 5 spot, I've got a lot of criticism off this decision because it's different than a lot of other people's choice. I continue to have UNLV, and in my rankings this week, they are the highest ranked group of 5 team. I have them at 23. And honestly, this is because they have beat 2 power conference teams, and they still have the best opportunity to continue to improve their resume. They're the only group of 5 team that plays 4 power conference opponents, and they're not scrubs. Like, these aren't the bottom feeding teams in the power conference. Syracuse, I mean, right now, Kyle McCord going into week 3 had 8 passing touchdowns, which was the most, or tied for the most, in the FBS. And that's not a feat you can just overlook. Syracuse is a potential top 25 team, and they can contend in the ACC. And even better, UNLV gets them at home. So their win against Kansas, right now Kansas is 1-2, but in the preseason they were a contender in the Big 12. And I think Lance Leipold will turn it around. They're really talented with Jalen Daniels at quarterback, Devin Neal at running back, and then the trio at receiver. They'll be fine, and I think they can make it into the top 25 by the end of the season. But I really did want to highlight Brennan Marion's go-go offense at UNLV. In 2022, he was the passing game coordinator at Texas, and he implemented something he was working a little bit with Sark in Austin. He brings it over to UNLV, and it was a very interesting. I'm a historian when it comes to college football, and so I think about like the T formation offense. He modernized it and brought it to Vegas, where he has 2 running backs on the strong side of the field, and he has 1 on the weak side. And what he does is he'll hand it off to the running back on the weak side of the field, and they'll pull the tackle and guard over to bring more blocking protection. And what it does is it basically is kind of eye candy for the defense to look at and say, pre-snap will look way different than post-snap, because it looks like they could either bring a guy out of the backfield and put him at receiver and go from there. But what they do is they keep both of them in, and then they bring 2 more blockers. So basically it's the original side of the line of scrimmage they had. It's the pulling, guard, and tackle, and then it's the running backs blocking. So you have 3 levels of protection, and it works successful every time I've seen it. And then off that, they have Matthew Sluka, who can run the ball. And so when you have a running game that works really well and a running quarterback, defenses usually tend to stack the box. So I saw a lot of 7-8 guys in the box for Kansas on defense. The only issue UNLV's had is Sluka has a 44% completion percentage on the season. So usually it would be nice to take shots when there's 7 or 8 guys in the box. We'll see if Sluka can improve, because I think it's even more impressive that they have 2 power conference wins with a quarterback who's been below average passing the ball. So I just keep thinking about the go-go offense is so unique because they also have position players who are, positionless, really. You have their 2 best players, Jacob DeJesus and Ricky White, are labeled as receivers, but especially when they start to get into their more unique offensive looks with 3 running backs or 2 running backs on the same side of the quarterback, they will put a guy like DeJesus, who is really quick. He's 5'7". So behind the large offensive lineman, you can't even see him. They'll get him the ball, and in open space, it's hard to get the right angle for a defensive back to catch him. And then same with Ricky White. I would like to see them utilize Ricky White more because I think he's their best player. Even if Sluka can't get the ball to him, run sweeps, get him in the backfield, hand the ball off, do misdirection. Off the modern T formation I call, they do a counter play so it looks like you're going to the right, and it gives time for the guard and tackle to pull. It's so hard to stop that. So it's really fun to watch. Such a unique offense that's new and hopefully modernizes a lot of college football that other OCs can use. And then on defense, the broadcasters Friday night on ESPN talked a lot about Jalen Catalon at safety. He was an all-SEC performer at Arkansas when Barry Odom was there. And then at linebacker, they have Woodard, who also transferred from Arkansas. So these are power conference level players. At Arkansas when they were a top 25 team. So this isn't your everyday group of 5 team. So when later in the season, when they get to Syracuse, Oregon State, and Boise, I think they are good enough to go 2-1 and go and win the Mountain West. And I think if they go 3-1 against power conference teams this year, and then they go and win their conference, how could you leave them out of the playoff spot? Memphis, to me, when you look in the offseason at the additions they get Mario Anderson, a transfer from South Carolina at running back. They bring back one of the best group of 5 receivers in Rock Taylor. And then the only 4-year starter at the same school in college football in Seth Hennigan. And then they go into Tallahassee and it comes down to the last play. I expected more of a statement by the Tigers I was kind of disappointed when I left that game to turn it to the Apple Cup. I just kept thinking about they should have finished in the red zone more. They only put up 20 points against a defense that has struggled. Their defense looked good against Florida State's offense, but, Florida State doesn't take shots. DJ Uiagalelei is a very inconsistent quarterback. I expected more of a statement. And then Boise had a bye week, so my questions about Maddox Madsen at quarterback are still there. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see week 4 of college football, see some better matchups this week, and to answer a couple questions about the Big 12 and the SEC as a whole with the Tennessee-Oklahoma matchup. So thank you for watching. I hope you come back. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will continue, hopefully, to improve my skills.